Question number 13 of the PhilNITS FE afternoon portion of the exam. In this question, we are given a function called our brackets balanced, which checks for balanced brackets. It parses the given array of characters, and when an opening bracket is encountered, this is pushed onto the stack. Now when a closing bracket is encountered, an element is popped from the stack and tested if it corresponds to the opening bracket. If the closing bracket matches its corresponding opening bracket, the process continues. Otherwise, it fails and the function returns false. After all characters have been processed, it returns false if any characters remain on the stack. Otherwise, it returns true. For simplicity, only brackets are considered as arguments to the function. The table shows examples of arguments provided to our brackets balanced and return values. Okay, from the description, what we need to do is, given the function, would we be able to get a true if the brackets are all balanced? And would we get a false if the brackets are not balanced? And I think in the program, we should be able to choose the answer for the blanks so that the output would be what we want. And I think in this question, we also have examples of what we need to do. For example, here the first row says that the return value is true, meaning it's balanced. And if you look at the arguments or the brackets, we see that we get an opening, and then the first closing that we get should be the bracket for the last opening bracket that we got. And therefore, these two correspond with each other and are matched. Now the next one, this one, matches the previous opening bracket, and so that's also okay. And then what we get next is this one, which corresponds to the other one. Okay, and then let me see if I got it right. Okay, this one is actually not a bracket in our argument, but signify that we have a set of elements. Okay, so just to clarify that part. And in this case, the second row tells us that the return value is false because we get an opening, closing, and it corresponds to the first or the last opening bracket that we put. But later on we see that we get another opening and another closing that corresponds to each other, but the first opening, the parentheses, is not closed, and therefore it remains in the stack, and that's why we get a return value of false, meaning the brackets are not balanced. Third row, opening, closing, and we see that the last opening that we put in the stack does not match with the first closing that we find, and therefore its return value is false. Moving forward, we do have a lot more of the explanation on the methods and the other parts of the program. And then afterwards, let's get into the actual program itself. And we can find that the brackets are here. And we get this pair, and also for the other ones, the other types, all of them are characters. Okay, all the brackets are characters. And then we have a function called our brackets balanced to see whether the brackets are indeed balanced or not. And we have a function called is opening bracket and another function called get closing bracket. The blank here, A, we need to fill up, and there's another blank, B, that we need to answer. This one, the is opening bracket, is a function that will tell us if the character that we received is an opening or not. And then if we want to get the closing bracket, we would of course also need to answer a blank here. And then let's see, having seen the blanks, we need to see the choices. In this case, I ended up choosing the incorrect answer because the correct answer is supposed to be H. However, if we look at the columns, particularly blanks B and C, I did get them correct. It's just that the first blank for column A, I put in equals C, when in fact it should be not equals C. So sometimes you get the other blanks right, but because of one blank, the whole thing is wrong. Okay? Now, let's see why it's supposed to be equals, not equals C, and equal C is incorrect. Okay, here's the program again. We have the set of brackets, the pairs here, and we got the function here. And what we need to do is, given an expression, a set of characters, an array of characters, can we find the answer to whether they're balanced or not. And it's saying that if it's an opening bracket, the first character, then we push it onto the stack. If it's a closing, we need to know if the stack is empty or not. If the stack is empty, meaning, for example, we haven't added any opening bracket at all, and we get a closing bracket, then that means that the set of brackets that we got is not balanced. That's why it's false. Otherwise, if there's something inside the stack, then we get it out, we pop it. The first thing that is on top, which is the last, I guess in this case, the last bracket, the opening bracket that we put. If we're starting from the very beginning, we put it in stack bracket, and then we check for the closing bracket. We get the closing bracket given the opening bracket. Okay? And if we look at the function get closing bracket, we can see that in this set of instructions, we could get the closing bracket given the opening bracket. Okay? And I put here the correct answer for blank C, because if we look at the global character, the array of characters called brackets, we have here again the pairs. And given the opening bracket, we can find its closing bracket. Okay, so the get closing bracket function gives us the closing bracket of the opening bracket. Okay, now once we got the closing bracket, we want to know if the input, the closing bracket that we're currently at, is not equal to the closing bracket of the last opening bracket that we put. If they're not the same, then that means that the set of brackets, the array of characters, are not balanced. Okay? And again, to remember how we got that, we can look at the example, and we see here, oh, let me remove that part. Okay, see if we can move this a little bit more here. And again, if, for example, in this case, the last opening bracket that we put is not equal to the closing bracket that we got as the next character in our array of characters, then they don't match, and so they're not balanced, and therefore the answer is false to the answer to whether the brackets are balanced or not. Okay, so that's why we are going for not equals to C, because our return value is false. And I think this part might be something that may cause a little bit of confusion for people, because even now when I'm attempting to explain it, somehow it can be a little bit difficult to understand, because we get closing bracket, we get not equals here, and then we get a return false. And sometimes if you have to think about all these things at the same time, it can be quite confusing. But the idea behind the closing bracket not matching the character that we received, which should be the closing bracket for the last opening bracket in the stack, and because they don't match, then we get a false to the question on whether the brackets are balanced or not. Okay, now after that, we now have the last part, which is stack is empty. And I think that the stack is empty, we need to know whether there would be any brackets remaining. And if there are brackets remaining, then that means that this would give us a false, because it's not empty, and therefore the brackets are not balanced. But if it's empty, meaning that we've matched all the brackets, because as you can see here, we go through each of the characters in the input, the expression, then because the stack is already empty, all the brackets have been matched. And because they're empty, the empty the stack is empty, then this would give us true. Therefore, the brackets match, and the question from the function are brackets balanced is also true. And again, for our correct answer, it is letter H.